Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the inaugural session of the 9th Herat Security Dialogue. My name is Dawood Muradian, and I'm the Director General of the Afghan Institute for Strategic Studies. It is our distinctive honors that we are hosting His Excellency Mr. Amrullah Saleh as our inaugural speech giver. Before that, I would like to introduce where I am right now. I am in Herat, a city in western Afghanistan, and it is one of the world's oldest cities that has been a settlement for over 2,000 years ago. In just down the road where I'm staying here is a Herat citadel where used to be a fort before Alexander Great. So there is a truly historic city here in Afghanistan. Years that, and we look forward to welcoming friends and colleagues from around the world next year, because unfortunately, because of the corona pandemic, this year we have to organize our annual Herat Security Dialogue in a two format of the virtual conference, which was today, and a small in-person conference, which will start tomorrow. About Mr. Amrullah Saleh, I think those people who are following Mr. Amrullah Saleh, they have a clear idea who is Mr. Amrullah Saleh is. But I would like to give you a small secret of his personal life. I know he has been Afghanistan chief intelligence and chief spy, but I think it will be of interest to find out more about his personality, that very few people are aware of his hobby in life. What I have seen in Mr. Amrullah Saleh, three very interesting factor. One is that Mr. Amrullah Saleh drinks a lot of water. If you see him in a healthy condition, not only is a regular sportsman, but he drinks a lot of the water. That amazingly how he can accommodate that amount of water here. The second aspect of Mr. Amrullah Saleh, which impressed me, is that he reads a lot. I challenge anyone in Afghanistan who has the latest book about Afghanistan in English. And he reads all books that have been written about Afghanistan, despite all his heavy workloads, but he never stopped reading about books here. And I think the third factor about Mr. Amrullah Saleh is his combination of his pragmatism and his principle in politics. As we know, Mr. Amrullah Saleh was the first critic of President Ashraf Ghani till before presidential election. And he was very articulate in his criticism of Mr. President Ashraf Ghani. But I think now he has been one of the closest allies that President Ashraf Ghani has in the Afghan government and Afghan politics. And what does it say that about the Afghan elite and Afghan politics? And that is the capacity of the Afghan political class to accommodate each other's, to find a mutual grounds. And the fact that we have in Mr. Amrullah Saleh and President Ashraf Ghani a kind of a sort of reconciliation of two different personalities, two different backgrounds, but are united on certain principle, and that principle is preserving our constitutional order and the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So I would once again welcome all of you around the world to join us this interaction, and we're very grateful to His Excellency Mr. Saleh to accept our invitation to give the inaugural speech of the 9th Herat Security Dialogue. And we are very grateful to our colleagues in Delhi and in Washington who have kindly accepted to co-host this conference. So I stop here, and the platform and the floor is His Excellency Mr. Saleh. Mr. Saleh, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, brother, for your spicy introduction of myself. Good evening to you in Herat and all of the participants with you. Good evening to our friends in India, and good morning to the co-organizers in United States. Dr. Hussain Haqqani, and also our friends from the IDSA, Dr. Chinoy. I'm very happy to be a speaker this year. Unfortunately, I could not make it to a very significant and important conference in the past few years. I can't believe it that I'm speaking at the 9th round of Herat Security Conference. Dr. Muradian, you remember, I was invited to the first round when it was launched, and I think it will be very appropriate to remember and acknowledge the role of our mutual great friend, Dr. Espanta, who I used to call the godfather of the Herat Security Conference. Apologize if I use Mario Pozzo's word to explain his role with the Afghan Institute of Strategic Studies. You are lucky to be in Herat, but I am always puzzled as why the timing for the Herat Security Dialogue is either October or November. Those are not very pleasant months climate-wise in Afghanistan. As I remember in the previous conferences, the of your organization, the Afghan Institute of Strategic Studies, would always be a few lines from Rumi. There we have a commonality. So I would like to also start by reading a few lines from him, who I call the universal son of Afghanistan. In this land, in this pure farm, let us sow nothing but seeds of love and compassion. Darin khak, darin mazar. Well, fast forwarding the time and coming to today's Afghanistan, leaving the era of Maulana behind us, it is 2020, a turbulent year, a very violent year, a very ambiguous year, full of unpredictabilities. So I would like to focus on how we managed the year 2020 and how we are seeing the future and prospects of peace. First of all, prior to February 29th, Kabul Declaration and signing of the US-Taliban agreement in Doha, we had a chance to meet the US administration high officials, including Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Esper, and also NATO Secretary General in Munich, where we articulated, we profiled a number of risks associated with the unconventional style of negotiations that the United States had started with the Taliban. And those risks were the following. It's a tragedy that all of those risks we had predicted have come true. We predicted that the Taliban will use the paper to claim international legitimacy and recognition. They will not use this paper as a basis of compromise, settlement, and peace first. That's what they are doing. We predicted that they won't socialize the narrative of peace in their ranks and files. Today, we are seeing none of the Taliban commanders inside Afghanistan are aware of the false commitment of their negotiating team in Doha to a peace process. What they say we were told that after the agreement with the United States, the fighting has to intensify and cities must be taken by force. Between you and total conquest is what you do today, tomorrow, to make it happen soon. So peace has not been socialized by the Taliban. It is a deliberate strategy. It's not a coincidence. And we had predicted this back in Munich, in the sidelines of Munich Security Conference, to our allies from the United States and NATO. Three, we did say that the Taliban will deliberately misinterpret direct talks with the United States, and they will equate it as US abandoning Afghanistan. That's exactly what's happening now. They say to our negotiating team, quote unquote, that there are two superpowers. One is United States, and the other one is Taliban, the Quetta Shura. That level of inflation, that level of unnecessary elevation that they have falsely gained poses a direct challenge to the legitimacy of the peace process, and it poses a great risk and challenge. Four, we had predicted that they won't agree to ceasefire as they fear meltdown and they fear disintegration. Today, we are seeing that they use violence as their skin, and they are using violence as a leverage to gain more concessions in the talks. And they are yet to start a meaningful dialogue with their main interlocutors, which is the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. In the meantime, which is again number 5, we did predict that at the tactical and operational level, they will make alliances with the Daesh. You are aware of these sensational attacks, coward, heinous attacks against civilian targets, against the private learning center in west of Kabul, against the University of Kabul, and against the civilians. The so-called Daesh claims responsibility, but the operatives who actually plan these attacks, or even the suicide attackers who conduct these attacks, are members of the Taliban. Now, this means that the Daesh and the Taliban have started a barter trade. They exchange suicide bombers, material, and explosives and operatives to each other as per need. But when the attack is against a military target, the Taliban claim it. When it becomes too sensational, although launched from the same operational platform, they sell the victory to Daesh and they claim responsibility. So we are seeing a very clear alliance at the tactical and operational level between AISS, Khorasan, and the Taliban. Sixth, we had brought to the attention of our international allies that the deal does not have any hint about the Taliban sanctuaries. Let's not forget that the Taliban leadership is called Quetta Shura, and it is because their headquarters is located in Quetta. We had also said that if under the current circumstances the deal is being signed, it will also be, that's my point number 7, a very clear, very clear violation of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1373. That is the foundation for intervention of UN-backed NATO intervention in Afghanistan. 7, we had predicted that the gains and the values will be shaken at core, and an environment of second guessing will grip both Afghanistan and the region. And that is what is happening. Nobody is very sure as to what is the valid and foundational interpretation of the Kabul Declaration of 29 February or the Doha Agreement between the United States and the Taliban. Number 8, this is what we had said then, and we are saying, and I'm saying today, that it's not about Afghanistan only. It's not about Afghanistan alone. If this goes wrong, this will jeopardize the role of the Western civilization in today's world. And it will be a very dangerous decision to allow a fanatic group with massive history of involvement in international and regional terrorism to gain unprecedented concessions from not only the mightiest military and economic powers of the world, but also undermine the global order and ignore and not recognize the resolutions of the United Nations. By the way, we also, that's the last risk I had profiled, in addition to what I just mentioned. I said it will be extremely important for us to make sure that we read from the same page, and the Taliban are convinced to socialize a narrative of settlement, and they not insist on narrative of conquest based on their interpretation or misinterpretation of the religion. Today, that is happening, and if this is not corrected, it will give a boost to all fanatic groups who are pursuing global jihadism and whose only agenda is unleashing violence to set the agenda and gain political concessions. So those were some of the risks we had profiled, and those risks are coming, unfortunately, through at a very high expense and high cost to the Afghan civilians, to the Afghan civil society organizations, to the Afghan key and crucial infrastructure. Now, the part B of my presentation to you is, we did not recognize the Doha Agreement. We did not use the word recognize. We did not use the word welcome. We did not use the word acknowledge. We just said we take note of the Doha Agreement, because we knew if we used any stronger word, then they would impose upon us literal implementation of each word and each line. So we are not a signatory to the Doha Agreement, and we are not recognizing it. We have only taken note of it. And based on that, taking notice of it, we have agreed to go and start direct negotiations. But we were asked by the international community, and we were asked by our foundational ally, United States, for the sake of peace, release 5,000 Taliban. We released over 5,000 Taliban, amongst them 60 high-profile drug smugglers, amongst them the mastermind of the German embassy bombing, amongst them the killer of the Australian nationals, amongst them the killer of the French citizens, amongst them the kidnappers of the Indian nationals, amongst them some of the worst criminals who had committed crimes against the humanity. But we did take this risk to show our determination for a peaceful end to this situation and reaching a political settlement. The Constitution of Afghanistan does not and did not allow the president to do this. So he had to go to the people of Afghanistan And the people of Afghanistan expressed themselves in a lawyer jirga, and they gave moral authority and moral mandate to the president for the sake of peace, for the sake of reaching a political settlement. Drink this bitter juice and release these prisoners. The president did. It was not a sweet decision. It was not a popular decision. It's a decision that's still haunting us, because in return we have received nothing. We have not received even a day of peace, contrary to the promise that the Taliban had made to the United States negotiating team in Doha. Now, where are we now? People want answers. People want clarity. And to be honest, we don't have answers. We are not clear. Violence is high. Civilians get massacred. The heart of Afghanistan's enlightenment, Kabul University, was attacked. And as I said earlier, we cannot distinguish between ISIS operatives, Taliban operatives. When these operations happen at the tactical level, they have become totally intermingled. Next point. What is next? What is next from our point of view is very simple. We want ceasefire immediately, tomorrow, today. This is the desire of all Afghans, and we want to bow to the desire of the Afghan people. We want to respect the desire of our people. They want ceasefire, and we want it immediately, today, tomorrow, the soonest possible. We want the negotiations to go forward. We want the deadlock. We want the stalemate to be broken. We want a breakthrough in the talks. But let us be aware that the stalemate in Doha, stalemate is a product of the Taliban wrong interpretation of their agreement with the United States. They want to step over United Nations Security Council resolutions. They want to step over the entire legitimacy of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. They want to step on the all the values, and directly that their deal with the United States be the foundation and basis of the settlement. And the deal between them and the United States, which we do not recognize, and in which United States clearly says they don't recognize the Taliban Emirate, they see them as a group, is a Trojan horse. It is a veiled way of, it's a creepy way of coming to domination and power. So the Taliban interpretation of that deal has taken the whole negotiating process as a hostage, and we are not making any progress. We therefore call on our allies, and we call on those who have leverage over the Taliban to use that leverage and put pressure on them to agree to ceasefire. Well, if the Taliban have popularity, they shouldn't fear elections, and they shouldn't fear integration into the society. They shouldn't also doubt our sincerity either. Taliban believe if they cease violence and if they cease ceasefire, we will not take them seriously. That is a completely wrong and baseless assumption. We would like to assure them that even without violence, we will become more serious, we will become more sincere, the environment will have more legitimacy for peace talks, we will be surrounded by confidence, we will not be surrounded by coffins like today. So we call on the Taliban to give peace and negotiations a chance. The next point, what if they insist on violence? Let me be very clear, if they insist on violence, they will even lose what they have today. Afghanistan is a multi-ethnic country. It's a diverse country. Diversity of our society is our strength. The Taliban are facing popular uprisings in eastern Afghanistan and greater Jalalabad. They are facing uprising in greater Paktia region, southeastern Afghanistan, and they are facing popular uprising in once upon a time their home base, Kandahar region. So they are not the Taliban of the 90s to be welcomed in certain parts of the country. And they should recognize the new Afghanistan, and the new Afghanistan is sophisticated, it is educated, it has seen freedom, it has seen freedom of expression, it has seen exposure to the global values, and dominating this society for the Taliban will be next to impossible. So the society knows that they are the rejectionists. We are not the rejectionists. It's a very odd situation. Throughout the history, insurgencies erupt when sitting governments reject elections. This is the first time in history that a sitting government proposes democratic integration, proposes mainstreaming of an insurgent group and offering them to take part in the elections, but they reject. The reason they reject, they understand the time for religious militancy to dominate a society is over, and they will not win any election. Even if they participate in the election, I am confident they will not win more than 5 to 10% of the vote at best. So that is fear. They are fear. And my question is, why all of us, and particularly our Western allies, representing a magnificent civilization, should show docility and compromise and unprecedented softness to a group which does not enjoy more than 4 to 8% of popularity in Afghanistan. Of course, they are setting the agenda today because they are able to unleash massive violence and do massacre of the civilians. But again, we are prepared to do ceasefire. We have shown enormous patience. We have shown enormous restraint. We have not allowed our forces to this date to initiate attacks, to be provocative. We have tolerated so much pain. We have taken so much casualties for the hope that the Taliban will realize and their allies will push them for a meaningful dialogue. That meaningful dialogue has not started. Well, the Taliban interpretation of the Quranic verses is absolutely misinterpretation, and to a lot of extent it's false. Their interpretation of the word jihad is false because they take it out of context. In the Quran, jihad has been used many dozen times, and the Taliban only take those few instances where this word has been used for military movement. They ignore the other 38 or so many times the word jihad has been used for non-violent struggles and efforts in human societies. You know, the word jihad as a software has been downloaded on the Taliban by the Pakistani madrasas. A few days back, one of the very well-known clerics in Pakistan with very close ties and links to the Pakistani establishment, he issued a fatwa calling on the Afghan state to surrender to the Taliban, and his interpretation of the Doha Agreement is in par with the Taliban say to their fighters, that the United States is defeated and therefore rest of Afghanistan must surrender. Today, the biggest challenge ahead of the peace process is the Taliban interpretation of the Doha Agreement. They have gained unnecessary elevation. They have gained undue legitimacy. They have been inflated. Deflating them is a challenge. We need to work together to bring them down to their reality. And once they are down to their reality, then negotiations will be meaningful. Now, there are other challenges and problems in my country, and I would like to focus a little bit on those challenges. One of those challenges is the aid effectiveness. The narrative of the international community is, as if for 19 years there was a rain of dollars and cash over the Afghan population and we have misused it. Absolutely, that's not the case. We did a study, and particularly my office did a study based on facts and figures collected from NGOs, government institutions, private sector. At the best, we, the government of Afghanistan, get less than 40% of the aid. The other more than 60% goes to the facilitating partners and NGOs. We have no or minimum oversight over them, and they are not under any pressure to be accountable. So we have to make it clear, when we speak of accountability, when we speak of combating corruption, we are forgetting a bigger chunk of the economy which is not in the control of the Afghan state. But that is not an excuse for us to be slow on combating corruption. We have started distributing ID cards to the entire personnel of the Afghan government. The process is going very, very fast. We have almost brought to zero ghost employees in the Afghan state. The president of Afghanistan formally created the Anti-Corruption Independent Commission, who were selected both by the United Nations, civil society organizations, and an Afghan government. We also understand there is fatigueness. We are all fatigued. It's not the donor fatigue only. We are also fatigued. But I would like to tell our international friends, we are not the cause of your fatigue. We are your partners. The cause of our fatigue and your fatigue is the Quetta Shura. Let us not punch the wrong spots. Let us punch the right spot. Those who have caused the fatigueness to you, to us, and to the whole system is called Quetta Shura. They are the people who destroy infrastructure. They are the people who have forced us to be consumed by countering violence and managing the war. But we have resorted to austerity. Very sincerely, we have resorted to austerity. We are doing more with much, much less. Let me give you an example which I did myself. We used to launch the Premier League, the football Premier League in Afghanistan with $3.5 million before. This year, we did it with less than $400,000. We are awakening to our reality. And our reality is we are a least developed country. We are a poor country. The Afghan expectations were raised unrealistically over the years. Sometimes back, we went to a province where the people stood up and they listed 38 demands, totaling around $10 billion for one province. I said, you asked for everything except one. You didn't ask us to build you a ladder to the moon, because that type of the situation was created by influx of NGOs in my country, and we are now dealing with the consequences of it. So we are tapping our own potentials. We are investing in water. We are investing in extractive industries. For the first time in history of Afghanistan, we signed the largest memorandum of understanding with the largest energy company, Fortescue, Australian. They are going to start a 20,000 megawatt power project in Afghanistan, and very soon they are going to take more or less 120 Afghans to pursue their PhD studies in engineering in Australia. We managed the COVID very well. When I first gave an interview how we were going to strategize our COVID response, we were mocked, but we were proven right. We managed it. We had minimum casualties compared to advanced societies. We kept the prices stable, and it all came from our best relations with some of our neighbors. It came, we managed it because we had relied and we are relying on regional connectivity for economic stability of Afghanistan. And we are now hit by the second wave of COVID. The situation is not as dire and severe as the first wave, but you didn't see food riots. You didn't see people dying outside of hospitals. You didn't see people crying of no access to medicine. It means there is a functioning administration. We were in the lead in responding to COVID, thanks to President Ashraf Ghani's wisdom, leadership. His trajectory came through line by line, and it was very meticulous. We managed to do a lot of reallocation within our budget, and we sailed through that turbulence safely. That capacity is not at times being appreciated. While keeping the Taliban at bay, managing the COVID, but at the same time working with 26 stratas in the Afghan society, in the meantime delivering services, which means the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan is not a title. It is an icon representing functionality, effectiveness, management, and administration. So at the end, I have a message for three of my audiences. To the Afghan people, I am saying the world has changed. The environment has changed. We have to work very hard. We have to invest in our own potentials. We have to strengthen our own confidence. We have to rely on our roots. We have to rely on our indigenous values. We have to realize that we are not under the spotlight of the international community as we were in 2002 to 2014. And this is not a slogan. In our daily practices, we work closely with our people to minimize costs, to stay away from extravagance and luxury, and do much more with much less. We are doing it, and that has a direct impact on the security situation, because we are also implementing austerity measures in our security forces. And I don't want to go into the details of how, due to time and allowing other speakers to make their speeches. And to the region, we have great friends in the region. Our northern neighbors are our friends. India is our friend. We have excellent relationship with China. We have an expanded relationship with Iran. We wish to have the best of relationship with Pakistan, but the choice is with Pakistan. It's not with us. We want to turn Afghanistan into a corridor of energy, into a corridor of connectivity, into a corridor of relationship between Central Asia and Pakistan. Unfortunately, trade with Pakistan has declined almost by 70%. Because of the complications at the Karachi port, and because of the so many caveats and restrictions attached to the APTA, Afghan-Pakistan transit agreement. We once again call on the state of Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, to facilitate trade, to open up further, and to be not only one of our largest neighbors, but our best trade partners. We also call on them to try and test the beauty, the sweetness, and the fruition of a state-to-state relationship, and stay away from proxy domination. We all know they support the Taliban, and we call them to once in their history befriend the Afghan people instead of befriending a violent fanatic group. With the region, my other message is engaging Afghanistan is much effective. It's more viable than containing Afghanistan. Containing Afghanistan will be very costly and it will be very dangerous. And we are very glad to say today the region is engaging us. We have established air corridors, we have established trade links, we have established people-to-people relationship, and our friends from the region are standing on our side. Central Asia is on our side, India is on our side, China is working very closely with us. Our trade with Iran, with Turkey has gone up. A few Turkish firms are investing in Afghanistan, particularly in the sector of energy. So the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan is an ally, it's a friend, and it's an effective partner with countries of the region. I would like to see myself speaking with the same tune and with the same level of praise when it comes to our relationship with Pakistan. But as I said, the ball is not in our court. To our international allies, we are very grateful. Thank you very much. You don't owe us any dollar or any euro. We appreciate your generosity. You have been very kind. But you are talking of fatigueness. We are also fatigued. We are also digging graves. We are also smelling blood. Please do not forget that this sacrifice is not because of Afghanistan alone. Please do not say that you are running out of patience because there is no progress in 2 months. We have been your allies. We have given so much sacrifice. We are still giving so much sacrifice. We are not the cause of your fatigueness. The cause of your fatigueness is religious extremism, terrorism, fanaticism, and this violence unleashed by Quetta Shura. It is not by Kabul. So therefore, we would like a very respectful treatment of Kabul as the capital of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, which is managing this important, crucial, and historic alliance with the countries of the globe. Once again, Dr. Muradian, I congratulate you. I congratulate your co-organizers, Dr. Hossain Haqqani, our friends from India, Dr. Chenoy and Dr. Aparnath Pandey for organizing this dialogue and conference at a very crucial time. I wish you best of luck in your deliberations and in your discussions. We will prevail, and you will prevail, and I'm very sure that there will be Herat security conference and dialogue focusing on development next year, the years after that. Good evening to all of you. Enjoy your time. Goodbye.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Saleh. Ambassador Chenoy, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mr. Amrullah Saleh, Vice President of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Mr. Dawood Muradian, Director General of the Afghan Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Hossain Haqqani, and Dr. Aparna Pandey of the Hudson Institute, esteemed participants, ladies and gentlemen. I am very grateful to the Afghan Institute for Strategic Studies for inviting my institute, the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, better known as the IDSA, to join the 9th edition of the Herat Security Dialogue as a co-host for this special session, together with the Hudson Institute. The Herat Security Dialogue has devoted much effort to the task of addressing the long-standing conflict in Afghanistan and to bringing peace, security, and stability for the people of Afghanistan. I congratulate the organizers for their untiring commitment to this noble cause. Today, we have just heard a thought-provoking keynote address delivered by His Excellency Mr. Amrullah Saleh, the Vice President of Afghanistan. He has given us much to reflect on regarding the intra-Afghan peace process and the future of Afghanistan. India has been committed to peace and progress in Afghanistan. India understands the stakes in the Afghan peace process and its implications for the region. The External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, had addressed the Doha meeting. An Indian delegation had physically participated in the event. Afghanistan, as you all know, is in the throes of a very difficult transition. The last 2 decades have yielded mixed results. Democratic institutions are still nascent and must be preserved. I recall Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying in his speech on 25 December 2015 in Kabul, when addressing both houses of the Afghan parliament, that the parliament complex built by India was a small tribute to Afghanistan's progress as a nation and as a democracy. He had also described it as an enduring symbol of the ties of emotions and values, of affection and aspirations that bind us in a special relationship. Friends, over the past several years, there has been considerable progress in protecting the rights of women and minorities in Afghanistan. This achievement too must be preserved. It will permit the Afghan nation to draw more fully upon the rich talent and potential of all its citizens. Improved connectivity, rising levels of education, and greater accountability have created new stakes for the people of Afghanistan in the formidable task of nation building. They have learnt the hard way. They now cherish the advantages of a society founded on liberal values and respect for human rights. They yearn for the fullest preservation and celebration of their ancient civilization and the cultural heritage of a diverse and pluralistic Afghan society. There is keen realization today that in a fast-changing world, the Afghan nation will have to be both independent and competitive, and that this can be achieved only by attaching importance to education, skill development, healthcare, and respect for peaceful political processes. Friends, the lofty goal of building an enduring architecture for peace and progress is no doubt vital for the people of Afghanistan, but it is equally vital for all others. An Afghanistan that is secure and at peace with itself is a factor for stability throughout the region. The people of Afghanistan have long cherished the hope of achieving peace through mutual accommodation of goals and aspirations. It augurs well that the regional and international community is ready to lend a helping hand in accordance with the priorities of the Afghan people. At a time when the peace process is at a critical juncture, we recognize the enormous contributions and sacrifices made by the Afghan people and the international community. The presence of US forces in Afghanistan over the last 18 years has been a factor for peace, security, and stability. The US must review its withdrawal and plan it in a phased manner. An abrupt absence of US forces could lead to a deterioration in the security situation and threaten the progress of the past 2 decades. Violence, as you all know, has destroyed Afghan society and its institutions. Violence in Afghanistan or on its borders contradicts the impulse for dialogue. Indeed, there has been a commendable spike in violence since February. Whether it is the Daesh or the Taliban that carry out heinous attacks, they are equally condemnable. The Afghan National Defense and Security Forces has displayed great resolve and commitment in dealing with security challenges. The international community lauds the sacrifices of the ANDSF. The Taliban should eschew violence for the sake of national reconstruction. It must sever its links with all terrorist outfits which threaten regional and global peace and security. A peaceful Afghanistan has a much greater chance of attracting foreign direct investment for economic development. And a ceasefire would be the first step in this direction. In order to make the hard-won gains of democracy and development irreversible, the international community must continue to support the reconstruction process. Afghanistan needs nearly $5 billion in foreign aid annually to maintain stability and to make progress. The upcoming donor conference, to be co-hosted by Finland, Afghanistan, and the United Nations in Geneva on the 23rd and 24th of November, should be used as an opportunity to refocus attention on advancing realistic and sustainable reconstruction plans. India has reiterated its conviction at the maiden round of the intra-Afghan dialogue that the peace process must be Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, and Afghan-controlled. We have stated before as well our hope and expectation that it must respect the national sovereignty and territorial integrity of Afghanistan and preserve the progress made during the last 2 decades towards building a democratic Islamic republic in Afghanistan. Equally, the interests of minorities, women, and all vulnerable sections of society must be preserved, and the issue of violence across the country and its neighborhood has to be effectively addressed. Friends, India believes that Afghanistan has a right to forge its own destiny and to realize its fullest potential. Above all, the peace process brooks no external interference. India respects the will of the people of Afghanistan, whatever they choose for themselves. India and Afghanistan have age-old ties. Our close bonds have stood the test of time. India has played an important role as a major development partner of Afghanistan, executing more than 400 projects across its 34 provinces. The Afghan-India Friendship Dam, the Store Palace restoration, the Phule Kumri power project, and the Zaranj Delaram road are enduring symbols of India's strong commitment to Afghanistan's reconstruction process. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India has taken proactive steps to reinvigorate the regional and global response to the COVID-19 pandemic through its initiatives, not just in SAARC, but in the G20 as well. India is ready to extend whatever help it can to the friendly people of Afghanistan. India is committed to provide assistance to help rebuild Afghanistan's infrastructure and institutions, promote education and manufacturing, and explore natural resources. India is also willing to provide duty-free access to the Indian market for Afghanistan's exports. Friends, terrorism continues to afflict our region. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in his recent address to the UN General Assembly, terrorism is one of the biggest challenges, not for any single country, but for the entire world and humanity. That is why, as he put it, it is absolutely imperative that the world unites against terrorism. On its part, India has policies of zero tolerance for terrorism. We hope that Pakistan will one day realize the folly of using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. And as Afghanistan enters a crucial phase in the intra-Afghan peace process, the people of Afghanistan must guard against the country's territory being misused again by external forces. A repeat of history would be a great tragedy. The road to peace will be long and arduous. It will require infinite patience, perseverance, political will, and wise leadership to ensure a successful outcome. It does not help that the United Nations has been rendered less than effective in recent years by geostrategic contestation. It is our cherished hope that a sovereign and independent Afghanistan will one day regain its historical importance as a regional hub for energy, trade, and connectivity. It is our hope that Afghanistan's economy will one day successfully connect with markets and supply chains throughout the region, especially with India, without a veto by others in the region. With these words, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I once again thank you for inviting me to address you. I wish this year's Herat Security Dialogue great success in its deliberations, and I also take this opportunity to wish you all continued good health. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for very substantive contribution and intervention. Now we go from Herat to Delhi, and from Delhi to Washington, our colleague at the Hudson Institute. Please.
Thank you to Afghanistan Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Dawood Moradian, for inviting Hudson to be a co-host. It's a pleasure to be part of the Herat Security Dialogue. Also a pleasure to co-host with the Manohar Parrikar Institute of Defense and Strategic Analysis, and good to see Ambassador Shenoy. It was wonderful to hear the Vice President lay out so succinctly and in detail what Afghanistan has achieved, Afghanistan's sort of problems and challenges, and what Afghanistan seeks from both its neighbors and from countries around the region. Afghanistan is a critical country. It's located in a key part of the region and the globe. It will remain important not just for its neighbors, including India, but for even the United States and the Western nations. Right now, we are all waiting to see what the next, the Biden administration will adopt as its policy towards Afghanistan. But I do believe we would know, we can take some solace from the fact that Mr. Biden will not have a very or an overly simplistic view about why are we wasting money. He does understand Afghanistan. He does understand Pakistan. He's going to be the only former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee who's going to become the president of the United States. So he does understand the region well. I would like to apologize on behalf of my colleague, Ambassador Haqqani. He took unwell this morning, and therefore he is unable to attend the dialogue today. So on his behalf, my deep apologies. But sort of, it was an amazing discussion. And now I would like to, as the moderator for the Q&A section, I would like to ask people to let me know if anybody has any questions. You could either use the raise your hand function in Zoom, send me a message or using the chat, or indicate otherwise, so I can call on you to ask a question or express a comment.
Yes, I just received a message from Mr. Saleh's office. Unfortunately, he had to leave us because there is a meeting that he had to attend in a few minutes. He offered his apologies that he couldn't be with us for the rest of the meeting.
Thank you. We understand that it is, of course, the Vice President has a lot of meetings. Mr. Kumar, please ask your question.
Thank you. My question actually is that given the current transition uncertainties in the US, there is this talk that the incumbent president, Mr. Bush, might actually precipitately withdraw the US forces from Afghanistan before Christmas, as he earlier tweeted. I'm just wondering how the current uncertainty in the US is actually translating into the situation as it prevails in Afghanistan now, considering the fact that the tension and the violence is growing there. Thank you.
I think you meant Mr. Trump, right?
Indeed, yes. And the change of top leadership in Pentagon, for example. All that is now very much in the news in the US media.
Yeah. So this question is addressed to Dr. Moradia.
Well, to all experts who watch Afghanistan very closely. Thank you.
So I'll just say that, I think we should sort of, we shouldn't preempt anything which the current President Trump will do. We don't know right now whether or not he will tweet, but maybe we should wait and watch that. But I do believe that, there are people and the US military does understand the sort of, the US military has expressly said over the last few months, it does not want to precipitously leave Afghanistan. And it wants to make it a phased withdrawal. That's all I will say, but I will leave it to others. Dr. Moradia or Ambassador Shenoy, anybody who wants to add to that?
I would like to share my experience of working with different U.S. agency. In my previous job, I was with the Afghan government, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and also a U.S. military here. And I have a huge respect for the discipline of the U.S. military. That from the outset, it seems that they are just cowboy type of forces, but the U.S. military, I find it extremely disciplined, well organized, and they have been insulate themselves from a political upheaval back home or also regionally. Therefore, again, purely on my personal experience, this hectic Washington's, White House, State Departments, the media, when I interact with the U.S. military, I find them more stable, more in charge of their mood here. Therefore, I don't expect any substantive change in next 2 months or so in the U.S. military, because they already have learned how to observe a political turmoil back home.
And if I may just add, I would simply say that I too endorse what has just been said. It's very unlikely that there would be any kind of change at this particular juncture. In any case, if you read the agreement of February in Doha, the first two elements there are very clearly establishing a linkage between, the reduction in violence to a withdrawal in the sense that Afghanistan's territory will not be used to mount any kind of attacks against U.S. interests. So as long as there is continuing violence, in any case, not just the next 2 months, but beyond, perhaps beyond May as well, there will be the question mark about a complete withdrawal, so long as there is violence. If violence ceases, as is expected of the Taliban, then in that case, there is much greater chance of fully implementing that agreement.
Thank you. Dr. Anand Tiwari, please ask your question.
Good morning to you all from the US. I'm Dr. Anand Tiwari. Basically, my question is regarding the deep interest of China in Afghanistan, especially with reference to Wakhan corridor, that how deep is their interest and how it is panning out in terms of geopolitical significance. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Muradian, would you like to respond, and then Ambassador Shenoy?
I think, first of all, Afghanistan and China, very few people know that we are neighbors. Although in terms of the geography, it is a few kilometers. But we have a very friendly, stable relationship with India, but not a productive relationship, for a very simple reason that we do not know about China. China, for us in Afghanistan, is an enigma, is a big a country, very long history. So therefore, here in Afghanistan, many of us have a kind of a mystic view of China, and therefore not a realistic update of today's China. The same, I would say, is about our neighbors in China. For them also, Afghanistan is an enigma. There is hardly adequate expertise in Beijing about Afghan history, Afghan politics. So now we are physically neighbors, but in terms of the mutual understanding, I don't see great convergence of view about the two countries. Therefore, I would see the China as a curious observers of Afghan affairs for the foreseeable future, and not a serious players, because China does not have the tools, the asset that can be an effective player in Afghanistan. So therefore, China would be a curious observers for the future as if I can predict the future, which no one seems to be able to do so accurately.
Thank you very much, sir. But I would also like to know how deep is their interest in Wakhan corridor?
Again, I mean, my personal experience is that the Chinese, they don't speak their mind. And you know, unlike we people in Afghanistan, we are very talkative. The Chinese are very selective in expressing their views here. Wakhan, it seems for China, is a kind of a double-edged sword. On one hand, they see Wakhan as an opportunity, as a gateway to enter Afghanistan and the Middle East. Today, we had a session of the feasibility of China, Afghanistan, Iran trilateral cooperation, because there is a geographical connectivity between Iran, Afghanistan, and China. And Wakhan is a gateway to enter Afghanistan, and via Afghanistan to Iran and Turkey. So Wakhan is a gateway for China. At the same time, Wakhan for Chinese strategic community is seen as a kind of a barriers against the barbarian who comes from Afghanistan and Central Asia. Therefore, again, a gateway and embrace connectivity, or to see it as a fortress against the barbarian of Central Asia, Afghanistan, and West Asia.
Any other questions? Ambassador Shenoy, would you like to say something?
Well, I'd simply say that China's interest in Afghanistan is multifold. China has deep interest in its connectivity projects reaching Afghanistan and traversing Afghanistan, as in the case of the Belt and Road Initiative. China is also interested, as it has shown interest in the past as well, investing in Afghanistan's natural resources, its iron ore, its other natural resources. And above all, China also has interest in Afghanistan remaining stable and friendly because it realizes that its soft underbelly in Xinjiang, which is a region in considerable state of ferment, is next door to Afghanistan. And any kind of radical ideologies spilling over into China, particularly into Xinjiang, from Afghanistan, or for that matter, from Pakistan, would be detrimental to China's security interests. Thank you.
May I ask a follow-up question, if it's permissible?
Sure, Mr. Bhamoria.
Okay, so actually my question really was this. It's not about the attitude of the US military which is present in Afghanistan. My question actually was that given the uncertainty, transitional uncertainty in US, the fact that the Pentagon top brass has been changed, I'm wondering whether this gives an opportunity for the, let's say, troublemakers in Afghanistan to mount more violent attacks on the civilians and the Afghan government assets, or Afghan government forces, leading to a situation of instability there, in the sense that perhaps in a situation like that, whether the US forces would actually come and intervene on behalf of the Afghan government to make sure that the government does not collapse. Thank you. That's all my question.
Dr. Moradia, I will hand it back to you and then Ambassador Shenoy, but Dr. Moradia, maybe you could answer, and then I believe sort of that is the last question we have.
I think as Vice President Saleh indicated in his speech, the Taliban's strategy is victory. There has not been any credible sign that suggests that there is a peace constituency among the Taliban. The prevailing mood among the...
I think Dr. Moradia should be logging back in, but I believe this would be the final question. We will let him log back in. Ambassador Shenoy, if you had any last minute thoughts, then we can.
I think we have Mr. Muradian back there, so let him finish
Yes.
what he was saying.
Yeah. Dr. Muradian.
I think my last word is that unfortunately there is no last word as far as Afghanistan concerned. Therefore, we have to continue to remain engaged about a situation in Afghanistan. It is a highly dynamic and evolving situation in Afghanistan, and there is no prevailing force in Afghanistan that can have a final say in Afghanistan. There's a lot of mutuality of all actors in Afghanistan. Sadly, there is no last word about Afghanistan.
I will hand it back to you, Dr. Muradian. Thank you.
Ambassador Chinay, please, if you have any concluding remarks, then
No,
we say
thank you.
goodbye.
Thank you very much. No, it's just been a fascinating discourse this evening. And I endorse and echo what you just said about the situation being both fraught and in a state of evolution. So there is no finality to the agreement. There is no guarantee to its fullest implementation. Time will tell. But we must remain optimistic and continue to do the right thing. And the people of Afghanistan are trying their best to do the right thing. And we pray and hope that they will succeed in their endeavors. Thank you.
Aparna, have you got any final word of anything from Washington?
I would like to say sort of thank you and AISS for inviting us to Hudson to be part of this endeavor. Sort of, wonderful to be with everybody and to think, and sort of, hopes, prayers and wishes that, the next time we are part of the Herat dialogue, we sort of, we have a more positive view of what is going to happen in Afghanistan, and things are better than they are right now.
Likewise, and thank you very much to you, our colleague in Washington, and our colleagues and friends in New Delhi, and also colleagues and friends who have been watching us around the world. Very good evening from Herat, Afghanistan. Thank you.